for any.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference of the delegation of the Civil Liberties Committee that has been visiting Latvia and Lithuania in the past 3 days. We have here the members of the delegation and the chair, Mr. Lopez Aguilar, who is going to share with you the impressions.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your kind attendance to this press point. This is a European Parliament official delegation. The Committee of Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, which I chair, and representing all the relevant political groups which express the political pluralism of the European Parliament, representing directly 450 million European citizens, including all Latvians, all Lithuanians. So we are representing here this European dimension of both Latvian and Lithuanian citizenship in a very tight agenda that we have been conducted for the last 3 days. No stop from 7 a.m. to late at night, having a series of interlocutors, stakeholders, making meaningful use of every point in our agenda, including, of course, most especially, the field visits. That is the main purpose of a European Parliament delegation when traveling to a member state to the European Union. Field visit, fact-finding. That is getting to know the situation as it is. So that we draw the lessons in order to improve the EU response. So the first point I would like to share with you is that we have visited in 3 days busiest agenda, full from early in the morning to late at night, 2 member states of the European Union, worth considering, because they are facing a huge challenge in the external border of the European Union. It's not the external border of Latvia with Russia or Belarus, it's not the external border of Lithuania with Russia and Belarus. It's the external border of the European Union. That is our concern. And our aim here is to improve the EU response to the challenges that are faced by these particular member states in this piece of external border of the European Union, as it is the case of any other external border of the European Union. And the background is that the LIBE committee is the one responsible for policy making and law making, both in migratory and asylum issues. We do make laws in the European Parliament, and we have put in place a European migration package consisting of nothing less than 8 pieces of legislation by now. And we have put in place an asylum package meant to build up a European common asylum system consisting of nothing less than 9 pieces of legislation. But they are to be improved. And there is actually underway in the Committee of Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs a legislative procedure meant to improve that migration and asylum law of the European Union. So we are here to check fact-finding, getting to know better, draw lessons, draw consequences, and put pressure into the European institutions. First, the European Parliament, but also the scrutiny we exercise on the European Commission, which is guardian of the treaties and guardian of the European law. And the agencies, which also relate to the committee: Frontex, External Borders Agency, European Asylum Agency, Fundamental Rights Agency. All of them have a very relevant say in assessing the challenges that have been faced in this piece of external border of the European Union, Latvia and Lithuania. The second consideration I wanted to share with you is that, yes, we heard the testimonies of officials. We heard very carefully the testimony of the border guards, which are doing their job with the tools they have, with the mandate they receive. But we also have visited facilities, centers, reception centers, detention centers, retention centers. And there is European law which is to be respected. So we express the concern about the standard which is to be observed when fully protecting the rights of the human beings which are being dealt with in those facilities, be it migrant camps, be it retention centers, be it detention centers. There is law which is to be respected. There is European law which is mandatory in all member states of the European Union, including Latvia and Lithuania. All of the member states are to observe those European standards. There is such thing as a European asylum procedure. There is such thing as a European qualification directive. There is such thing as a fundamental rights charter of the European Union, in which there are rights which protect not only European citizens, but all human beings upon whom EU law is to be applied or implemented. So we take notice that those people in the facilities that we have visited are sending a message that the EU standard is to be respected first, and it's to be improved with the assistance of EU funds, Migration and Asylum Fund, Solidarity Fund, when needed, the Civil Protection Fund in order to attend certain emergency situations, and rights and values programs to finance NGOs, which are also paying a very relevant service in the field. There are many NGOs which are protecting migrants, which are willing to protect migrants and asylum seekers, and they are willing to add value as to their rights to be properly observed. So we are making this point. We have seen situations that are clearly to be improved. These people do have right to legal assistance, to get to know what their rights are, to a remedy when they see that there is a negative decision as to their asylum request. They have a right to interpretation in a language they can understand. They have a right to medical attention, to be checked regularly, particularly in situations which are most vulnerable: kids, newborns, little children that we have talked to, vulnerable women, pregnant. So there is a situation here that we should mind off, and we are willing to exert all our scrutiny power upon the Commission and upon the agencies so that they can actually deliver in order to properly assist the authorities of these two countries that we have visited, Latvia and Lithuania, as it is the case of every other member state facing challenges when it comes to abrupt migratory fluxes, irregular entries into the territory of the European Union. And they are all bound to the same principles. We stick to those principles. They are enshrined actually in the European Treaty. Shared responsibility and binding solidarity. That's the way we want it. That's the cause we fight for in the European Union. That means that we are here also to make sure that Lithuania and Latvia has not only the right, but the title to shared responsibility and solidarity from the rest of the member states. The third point is that we appreciate the progress that has been made. We understand the huge challenges, the difficulties that they face, the authorities of these two countries that we have visited. We understand that there is a moment in which a certain influx was not expected, but got on the rise very abruptly. And not per chance. It was no accident. It was what has been called a hybrid attack by a dictator nearby. Lukashenko regime accomplished it with the aggression by Russia on Ukraine. Notorious dictator in the soil of Europe, happens to be your neighbor, happens to be the neighbor of all of us. And with no cooperation from that side, there has been, yes, what we have been calling in the European Parliament the weaponization of vulnerable, most vulnerable human beings. I understand that poses a huge challenges on the authorities and the capacity to respond of the countries in the front line, be it Latvia, be it Lithuania. But yet, EU law matters. EU law matters not only in the good times, but especially in the rough times, especially in the hard times. And there is a hard time ongoing. We had a peak in the summertime, now it's winter. The peak could be again on the rise anytime soon when the weather improves, so we need to be prepared. And the EU standard is to be improved, is to be higher, is to be strengthened, is to be enforced. This is our task for being here. And the final point I would like to make is that this delegation of us, this visiting of the European Parliament, was planned much beforehand. But it happens to take place in a particular point of time, a particular minute in which we are suffering in all of Europe. In all of Europe, the impact of the intolerable, unacceptable, unlawful aggression of Putin's Russia on Ukraine. And that will certainly have consequences. And we gotta be ready to face the consequences also all together, acting together and expressing solidarity all together. The Temporary Protection Directive has been activated. It has been a long claim by our committee, Committee of Legal Justice and Home Affairs on the Commission. Activate the Temporary Protection Directive, which has been in no use for 20 years now. It's been activated precisely to grant immediate protections to the millions which are expected, million Ukrainians which are expected. You will be having your share, all of us will be having our share of solidarity to Ukrainians fleeing from the war, from the horror and the pain and the fear of the war, of aggression waged by Putin against a sovereign European state, Ukraine. But that means that we will have to increase again the pressure on the Commission and on the budgetary allocations which are to be financing that particular instrument of solidarity which is now underway. There has to be a higher level of financiation, budgetary allocations as to assist the effort of solidarity which is to be deployed in order to grant the standard of the EU level which is expected by all those many Ukrainians, expected to be millions. It's almost 1 million by now, according to the data that we have certified, but expected to be millions of Ukrainians waiting for the European Union solidarity, which is not only words, it's got to be facts. So it's been a learning experience, this of us here in Latvia and Lithuania. And we wish the authorities of both countries not only the best delivery, but also we are here to assure that the solidarity and the backup of European institutions is to be activated and mobilized to its very best, so that the kind of response that those people which have been cared for after the peak of the hybrid attack are properly attended, considering that the numbers are not that high. I know that this might seem worth discussing, but I'm making the point because there are some thousands, few thousands of them who made it according to this hybrid attack, and there are many external borders of the European Union which receive regularly thousands and thousands and thousands, and it takes, of course, some time, cannot be done overnight, but it takes the European backup and the European instruments and the European facilities and the European budgetary allocations in order to improve the type of response as to proper respect, full respect of the human rights involved to those thousands who were weaponized by this hybrid attack by Lukashenko regime, so that they can actually feel that while in the European Union they are always treated as human beings and their fundamental rights are always respected. Those are the points I wanted to share. Now I'm willing to take your questions.
We have a first question here.
Radio FM 99 Milia. I just want to know, I'd like to ask how that you planned the delegation visit before when the war was hybrid war. Now it's the real war started. And you are at the border of the aggressor, the direct aggressor who just bombed Ukrainians. How that changed your attitude to the places you visited, and also you are talking about the EU reaction. How it can be done that for the future, I mean, that the reaction would be not after, when the thousands are dying, but just before the aggression of Russia. It was clear for at least the Baltic states, it was absolutely clear that it will happen. But it was, like just talks, and nothing, no sanction before. Can it be changed just for the, sake of future?
Thank you for your question, which is fair expression of concern, which is widely shared. Of course, it's widely shared. This side of the table is widely shared all across Europe. Believe me when I state firmly that this aggression, this war of aggression by Putin's regime against Ukraine is a real time changer, is a breaking point. For the European Union, it has been actually a wake-up call to react united and cohesively as it did not respond to previous episodes of crisis that we have been undergoing for the last 10 years in a row. We have seen some episodes of crisis, but this situation has asked and obtained a united and cohesive response from the European Union institutions. With clear leadership, European response consisting of a variety of, a real menu of measures which are already underway and meant to have an impact on the aggressor. Sanctions, economic, financial, exclusion from the SWIFT system, freezing the assets of the oligarchs abroad. That's real pain for Putin regime. Humanitarian dimension, activating the temporary protection directive, let alone say another complementary measures as to prevent the so-called cyber attacks by enhancing the critical infrastructures of the European Union and by blocking the signal of Russia Today and Sputnik, but most importantly, getting ready to assist Ukrainians in their resistance. That means that the European Union is walking fast to a united, diplomatic, and, if needed, defense assistance to the Ukrainian forces and civil society which are resisting the aggression, including the provision of arms and weapons to defend themselves on the principle, on the assumption that you cannot put on equal footing the aggressor and the aggressed. So we are seeing a European response. I might add that this European response was certainly not expected by Putin. This European response has shocked. We can be certain of that. In its unity and its determination, it has made an impact on Putin. So I know that the situation is hugely challenging. Of course, we can all share that as a matter of principle. No discussion about that. The situation is extremely challenging, and it's unfolding before our very eyes. So there are different scenarios. And of course, we cannot rule out not a single scenario, because we have heard threatening statements from top officials of the Putin's regime, including its foreign minister. We have heard that the aggression could not stop here, that there could be further escalation into the so-called dissuasion capacity, deterrence capacity, which is a kind of way to hide, not to express or to remind Russia's nuclear power. So the situation is extremely challenging. But I can only share with you the perception, the clear perception, that the European Union is behaving properly, is growing fast to its diplomatic and political capacity, growing fast, compelled by the huge challenge that we are facing in this unexpected misbehavior and war of aggression, which just broke all the standards of international law and humanitarian law.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No. So I don't see any other questions, so we will conclude.
No more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.